Hi and welcome to another card making video where I will be featuring two of my new stamp sets from my Oh La La collection. So the first stamp set is the one that gives you a map, the Eiffel Tower and many flowers as well as a little tag to decorate your project. And this one is the labels from Oh La La that gives you a coffee, sweets as well as many labels to play with. Now for today's card I'm going to start by using the Eiffel Tower. This is going to be my main focal point and I'm going to embellish it with many of the flowers that are included in the stamp set as well as the map. And I'm also going to stamp the little tag as well. I'm using a stamping platform so that I can do lots of stamping at once and I can repeat the same stamping on top of it to get a good impression. If you don't have a stamping platform, you can just stamp the images one by one. For stamping my images, I'm using black ink, which is alcohol friendly, so that I can use my alcohol markers later on to color them. Depending on the medium that you choose to color your images, you need to use the appropriate black ink. For example, if you go with pencils, color pencils, then you can definitely go with dye ink. If you go with alcohol markers, you need to go with an alcohol-friendly ink. And again, if you go and use watercolors, you need to make sure that you use a black ink which is permanent. Now you can either use your scissors to cut around the images, or if you do have a scan and cut like I do, you can just run this through your machine and it's going to cut out every little image that you have stamped. Now a scan and cut is a machine that I have recently got and I find that it is super handy for me, especially since I am a professional crafter and I do a lot of stamping. It is a great help when you stamp those black images since you don't really need to buy every matching die out there. Of course, it's not going to do the perfect job, like here for example I want to cut out the inside, although there is a trick to do that with a machine. I don't really care about that, I find it is super easy to do it with my craft knife. And this is where you get to play with your coloring mediums, just use your favorite. Here today I'm using my TriBlends. These are my favorite alcohol markers just because I get all three shades just in one marker. I don't have to go through my markers to find which colors blend nicely. I just grab a marker and I have all three shades in one. And this is really not time consuming at all. You see all the images are so tiny, so just a few brush strokes. And usually I go through this coloring process with my alcohol markers really quickly. I don't do the perfect blending. Somehow at the end it always looks just fine. Usually I don't even go with all those three shades in the marker. Mainly I use only the two of them. So depending on the colors that you choose to use for your focal points, you will get a completely different look. So for example, you can use pale colors for a shabby chic look and feel. You can use browns and you will end up with a vintage looking project. You can use the exact same card design, but switching colors can give you a completely different look. So I have a pink flower, a yellow flower. I used two different markers for coloring some of the leaves. And then for the Eiffel Tower, I'm just going to use light gray. I just want to add a shadow on it to make it look more dimensional, but I don't want to add actual color. You can definitely do that if you like. Now I'm going to work on my background, and this is a white panel that's slightly smaller than the standard card. I'm inking up the edge towards the center and I'm making sure that I'm not going to cover up completely the whole panel. I like to have that ombre look. I feel like it always adds some extra interest on a background. For coloring I'm using my dye ink, which is Cerulean Blue, and I'm going very lightly with the brush, as you can see, making sure that I don't load my brush with too much ink so that I can lightly transfer color for a very soft look. I'm also going to use the same ink and dilute it with a little bit of water, and with a very thin brush I'm going to add some splatters. I'm making sure that the splatters fall on the white space so that I add something interesting there. Then I'm going to do some stamping directly on top of my background from the labels Oh La La stamp set. I'm using the text, and again I'm going to use the same color of ink for the background and use the stamp randomly at the background. You can definitely use black for this step, or you can go with the same color of ink just for a more subtle look. Also, you can definitely use your fingers instead of a stamping block. This way you are not going to get the perfect impression. I feel it's more pleasing to the eye and it's more organic. Then I'm going to bring in a circle stamp from the stamp set with the Eiffel Tower. This time I'm going to use a block. This is a very small stamp and it's really difficult to use it with your fingers. I'm going to randomly stamp a couple of times at the background just to add another shape and a visual texture on the background. And then of course it's time to put everything together. You know I love dimensions, so most of the elements are going to be popped up by using foam tape at the back. I always audition everything, try to decide how it's going to look, play with the composition, and once I'm happy with the result, then I go ahead and glue everything down. Okay, I'm back. This was the main composition. I'm happy with how it looks, so I'm going to stick this panel on top of a standard card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And you can see I'm leaving a little bit of a border all around. I like to have this dimension, and the frame, I feel like it makes the card look more finished. Now for some finishing touches, I'm going to use decorative chips, again from the same collection. You will find here many lovely designs, very elegant. For example, you can use this Eiffel Tower instead of the stamped one for a completely different look. And you can see that although this is dimensional, it's not that thick and you can definitely use it on top of a card. This is again from the same Olala collection and you will see the same designs on the leaves. So these are the ones that I'm going to use for my card. Now this is a very intricate design, make sure that you separate it very carefully. I like to just cut out a couple of tabs that keeps everything together with my craft knife, and then all you need to do is to just use your normal glue and stick it down. The decorative chips can definitely be colored by using your embossing powder. You can use your alcohol markers to color them, anything really. However, I like them to use them in this color, which is very neutral. I think that it adds to a design, to a composition. It makes it look fuller, while at the same time it doesn't make it look busier because there is no color. And you see here how careful I am as I separate it, but you can definitely just cut it out with your fingers here. For example, I'm not going to actually use the whole thing. The branch is quite long for my composition, and I'm going to tag that as well. I absolutely love the decorative chips. I find that they add an extra touch on any card, and they're just super easy to store. I just use one of those envelopes, I throw inside everything from this same design, and I keep this nice and tidy. And now back on the card, I'm going to add some extra touches of shine. These are little white gems, and you can definitely use gems, pearls or sequins, whatever you have to add that extra touch. And I'm absolutely happy with how my card looks. All that's needed to do is to add a sentiment. Now, there are 3 different sentiments that can be used in one of the 2 stamp sets from this collection. You can smile, beautiful day, and bonjour. All 3 of them would go beautifully with this card design. So for this card today, I'm going with bonjour for making a card that is perfect to send just to say hi to everyone. I did use embossing ink to stamp the word on top of black cardstock. I'm heat setting the embossing powder, and then I'm going to use one of my sentiment dies to cut it out. And when I am creating cluster cards, I always like the sentiment to be part of the composition and not just float around on the empty space. That's why I just tag it behind the flowers. I'm going to finish off my card by giving it a mixed media look and feel. I'm just adding some white splatters, completely optional, only if you like this look. I absolutely love it and I cannot get enough splatters, white splatters on my projects. That's why I'm doing that here. By the way, I used here white calligraphy ink with a very thin brush to control the splatters, the size of the splatters, but you can definitely use acrylic paint or gesso, whatever you have, diluted with water. So that is the card for today, using the 2 stamp sets from my latest release. I'm absolutely happy with the result. I hope that you had fun and that you got inspired. List to everything I used can be found down below in the description, just like always. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Don't forget to like and leave me a comment, and I'll see you all next time.